Hello students, last video we discussed about the advantages and disadvantages of .NET framework architecture. Now in this video I am going to discuss about CLR. See, introduction. The runtime environment, which is also a part of the .NET framework, is known as the common language runtime. The runtime environment, which is also a part of the .NET framework, is known as the Common Language Runtime. See, the CLR stands for Common Language Runtime. The CLR stands for Common Language Runtime. CLR is the heart of .NET framework. CLR is the heart of .NET framework. .NET CLR is a runtime environment that manages and executes the code written in any .NET programming language. It converts code into native code within further can executed by the CPU. See, what is mean by native code? Native code is a compiled code to run on one specific processor and its instruction set. Native code is a compiled code to run on one specific processor and its instruction set. Then CLR is also referred to as managed environment. CLR is also referred to as managed environment. Then next, the CLR execution model. The CLR execution model. Now let's see CLR execution model. To begin with, we have to code, that is our source code, and source code compilation language like C Sharp, VB.NET, C++.NET or other language. What happen? When your code write in this programming language, so the language can contain its own compiler. So the language can contain its own compiler. Now once your code compiler, it is converted to assembly intermediate language and MSIL, that is Microsoft Intermediate Language, or layer second is known as managed code. Next step is to pass it to CLR during execution. Next step is to pass it on CLR during execution. Now this is CLR has another compiler instead, which is known as JIT compiler, that is just in time compiler. JIT compiler is main piece of CLR infrastructure. JIT compiler is main piece of CLR infrastructure. Assembly code can be passed into JIT compiler and JIT compiler can convert into native code. And native code can be connected to the operating system. Then next, the unmanaged. The unmanaged code directly connected with the operating system. Unmanaged code means the code which is developed outside the .NET framework is called unmanaged code. The code which is developed outside the .NET framework is called as unmanaged code. This is the CLR execution model, means common language runtime execution model. The next point, the components of CLR. Components of Common Language Runtime. First, CTS stands for Common Type System. CLS stands for Common Language Specification. Then next, MSIL, that is Microsoft Intermediate Language. Then next, Garbage Collector. Then next, Code Manager and Class Loader. Then first see one by one. CTS, Common Type System. CTS, it specifies a standard represent what type of data and value can be defined and managed in computer memory at runtime. It specifies a standard that represent what type of data and value can be defined and managed in computer memory at runtime. CTS, there are two types, value and reference. Value type can contain predefined and user defined. Reference type can contain pointers and self-describing. Predefined data types can contain byte, short, integer, decimal, double, string, etc. User-defined function can contain structures. Then next, for example, in C Sharp, we define data types as integer, while in VB.NET we define integer as a data type. See, for example, in C Sharp, we define data types as integer, while in VB.NET we define integer as a data type. Then next, CLS, Common Language Specification. Common Language Specification. It is a subset of CTS. It is a subset of CTS. CTS is written in CLS. CTS is written in CLS. The next component is Microsoft Intermediate Language. It is also called Common Intermediate Language CIL. It is also called Common Intermediate Language CIL. During compile time, compiler convert the source code into MSIL, Microsoft Intermediate Language. During compile time, compiler convert the source code into MSIL. During runtime CLRs, JIT compiler convert the MSIL code into native code. During runtime CLRs, JIT compiler convert the MSIL code into native code. The next component is Code Manager. Code Manager invokes class loader for execution of .NET application. There are two types of coding are used in Code Manager. First one is a managed code. Second one is a unmanaged code. Managed code. The code which is developed within a .NET framework is called managed code. The code which is developed within a .NET framework is called managed code. Unmanaged code. The code which is developed outside .NET framework is called unmanaged code. The code which is developed outside the .NET framework is called unmanaged code. The next component is garbage collector. It is used to load all classes at runtime. It is used to load all classes at runtime. The next class loader, it is used to load all classes at runtime.